I'm a little bit late in talking about this game, as this game got off of a discount just as I'm writing the script for this video. But even if Titanfall 2 isn't on a discount, it's a game that I recommend everyone to buy right now, especially thanks to EA being good for once and putting the game and a bunch of other games on Steam, because Titanfall 2 is great. It's one of the best modern first-person shooters out there that you should absolutely buy right now. If you're still unconvinced, well, allow me to elaborate in this video. Titanfall 2 is a game that unfortunately bombed at launch, and it's no thanks to EA sandwiching this game alongside other more popular modern shooter franchises. That was at the time where Battlefield decided to go back to World War I, and in retrospect the game was quite successful. Meanwhile, Call of Duty has gone completely bananas into a far distant future, and I don't recall people putting Infinite Warfare on the best Call of Duty game list, especially with a trailer that has a dislike ratio so high that it managed to break YouTube records. There's a lot to blame on EA for Titanfall 2's poor launch, and it's also really not helped with the fact that the original Titanfall doesn't have a single player campaign. Yes, this was at the time where game developers think that you can just sell a $60 game completely reliant on nothing but multiplayer content, except unlike Unreal Tournament or Counter-Strike, they don't have bots in them, so what's the point? EA thought that this is an idea so good they did it again with Star Wars Battlefront 2015, which is notorious for its ridiculous high price for a game that skims in a lot of content even on the multiplayer side. After knowing that people love Titanfall 2, they too thought that they can have a redemption arc by putting a single player campaign in Battlefront 2, but we all know how Battlefront 2 turned out to be. It has much bigger issues at hand than its lackluster single player campaign. It's gone better as time goes on, but man, it wasn't very good at launch. Which leads us into Titanfall 2, the only Titanfall game that is worth buying. Titanfall 1 is also out on Steam, but why would you buy a game that has no single player content and not a lot of people playing on multiplayer anyway, especially when they moved on to Respawn's other more popular free-to-play multiplayer game? If you're not a multiplayer guy like me because you hate people, then you're in the right place. Sit back and relax. You're gonna get one hell of an amazing experience. A very short one, but super sweet nonetheless. Titanfall 2 takes place in the distant future and a distant galaxy, specifically the Frontier, when the Interstellar Manufacturing Corporation, or the IMC, wants to plunder and take over all of the resources that the Frontier planets have all for themselves, which is a rather interesting representation to what EA does to every game studio they witness. You play as Jack Cooper, just some low-level rifleman in the militia for the resistance against EA Interstellar plunderers. After getting through the training session that has more bloom than your average Hollywood movie, he is later sent on a mission alongside matey other soldiers to combat against the evil corporations trying to steal all the plunder all the planet's resources. Unfortunately, as you put a couple of steps in, the IMC mercs wrecked everyone left and right. Somehow Cooper manages to survive thanks to the help of his guide and the Vanguard Titan pilot. Unfortunately, he gets wrecked by another mercenary pilot who has a Titan and dies. But before he does so, he transfers the control of his Titan BT-7274 over to Cooper. Cooper then becomes the acting pilot of the giant robot. Can Cooper survive through the IMC oppression? Will Cooper gain the trust of the robot? How many jokes revolve around obliviousness to sarcasm or general expressions are they gonna pull off in this game? The single player component of the game is a typical linear first-person shooter. Since you are the pilot, or more accurately the acting pilot of a Titan, you gain quite a lot of perks that lowly militias don't get. You get to be faster, stronger, more flexible, run on walls, and yet despite all of that, you can only carry 2 weapons. So much for the advanced weaponry. You also have the ability to temporarily cloak yourself in and out of the battlefield to recover yourself through intense firefights, and of course you get to control Titans to fight enemies and other Titans. Unlike you, puny human, the Titan can actually switch between multiple weapons on the fly, conjured from either the ether or straight out of the black hole of their lower regions, but we'll get to that in a bit. Titanfall 2 is about 4 years old at the time of writing, and the game still looks top-notch and gorgeous. This is a game from 2016, which is a sequel to a game from 2014. One thing that I find shocking is that the game is run on the Source engine. That's right, the very same Source engine that brought us Half-Life and many other games by Valve. What's really weird is how Wikipedia lists Titanfall 2 as having Source as its engine, but when you check out the list of games with the Source engine, the game is not present. Why? I don't know. I guess the people at Wikipedia forgot to list it, or is it because it's a heavily modified version? Anyway, I am still amazed at how this engine managed to age very well. The environments look stunning and colorful. The textures look crisp and detailed. The animation is fantastic. I love how when you interrupt your weapon reloading, the reload animation will continue rather than going to the very first animation. I love how the Titan enter animation varies depending on how you approach it. The movement animation on this game is buttery smooth, running on walls, sliding, crouching, jumping at the top of people like you're Mario or something. It all blends so incredibly well. The animation of the game is so smooth that moving around, jumping from places to places in and of itself is really fun to do. The game does have platforming sessions that makes the fluid movement animation truly shine. Granted, you can screw up at points, but that's just the nature of organic movement in that you can absolutely screw it up. The weapon animations in general is also very smooth. Thankfully, the game takes place in the future, and the weapons use holographic sights that are actually usable. Not to mention the weapons have actual punch. The melee too has actual punch. I just love moving around and doing stuff in this game in general. It's very smooth and pleasant. That being said, all of that animation is eating like 65 gigs of my drive game. I suppose you gotta pay all of that with something.
Pilot, I advise against turning yourself over to the IMC. Voice pattern analysis indicates they are lying.
You don't think I'm that stupid, BT?
Undetermined. I will not know.
People were genuinely surprised at how Titanfall 2's story and narrative are really good, and they are very good. The question is, how? How can the story of this first-person shooter game that doesn't really have a lot of story in the first one somehow manage to give us a really good story to accompany it? I mean, Titanfall 2's story on paper seems like something that we've heard a million times before. Corporation hell-bent on oppressing people are plundering resources left and right, and we need to stop them from doing so. So what makes Titanfall 2 special? Well, one of the keys to make a good story is not how original the story is, but how much emotional investment we have towards its characters. That's why The Last of Us worked so well to a lot of people. Not as much for me. I think Telltale's Walking Dead does it better, but unfortunately not a lot of people played that game compared to The Last of Us, even though they should. Titanfall 2's story is just your typical sci-fi plot, but it's the game's focus towards character relationship that makes it special. What glues the story together is our attachment towards the characters that make us want to root for them and want them to survive. The two characters in particular are Cooper, the protagonist, and BT, the Titan that he's temporarily assigned to. The core relationship between BT and Cooper is the primary focus of the story, one that brought us from one plot point into the next like a flowing river. The game starts off with you and BT reluctantly working together to survive, but as the game progresses, both Cooper and BT slowly build up a level of trust that you as the player also get along with. What really glues the plot together is that progression and the buildup of the trust between the two characters as they get more and more experience in dealing with future troubles, learning a thing or two from each other, trusting each other with each of their lives, and fighting with each other to the end of time. That is precisely why Titanfall 2's story is really good. It's not because of the evil corporation invading everyone plot, it's because of the two main characters who are involved in that plot, their relationship as the plot goes further, and their attempts in surviving through the hostile atmosphere, something that we as the audiences get along with and want to see them survive. It's a shockingly simple formula that manages to elevate a generic sci-fi plot into a genuinely engaging action drama, and in some respect, a buddy cop film. I do find it a bit weird that the game allows us to pick dialogue options. I've played Titanfall 2 several times, and every single time I always pick the more straightforward dialogue option, which makes Cooper blander than piles of bread. It's only until recently when I decided to choose the smug, sarcastic tone, which makes Cooper about as punch-worthy as that pickup artist in the bar who tries to woo women everywhere with techniques that couldn't even get him to the first base. Regardless of what kind of Cooper you are, the game is riddled with really really good writing and funny dialogues between the two characters, for the most part at least. There are some genuinely cringeworthy lines, and I put the buddy cop comparison because BT is always playing the straightforward, impervious to general expression or sarcasm character, whereas Cooper is just your normal everyday man who you can choose to be a punchable smug prick. His face reveal at the end really doesn't help. Still, at least they managed to build a good level of trust and a convincing relationship that you can sympathize with. The only criticism that I have with the story is my overall criticism of the entire game. It's way too short. It took me less than 4 hours to beat the game's campaign, and I feel like there are many points that the game could expand a little bit more. For example, there could be more scenes between Cooper and the original BT pilot. The battle at the intro could have been just a tad bit longer to make us get used to with the controls and the environment and all of that, or at least get used to in an actual combat situation. It's like taking a bite of the sweetest cake that you ever tasted in your life, only to find out that that's the last bite that you'll ever gonna get out of it. But a sweet cake is still a sweet cake nonetheless, and that's what matters at the end of the day. The story is absolutely sweet. The characters are sympathetic, relatable, and have actual character arcs and progress that glues the game's overall storyline. This game could have been a lot longer, but to the game's credit, it manages to end on a very satisfying note, a great climax that wraps up the camaraderie between the two main characters, signifying that they truly need each other to get through the day. I love it. Nothing much to add. Next section.
Titan in sight. Engaging.
The core gameplay of Titanfall 2 is the combat, and the combat is very good. It's fast, skillful, intense, and incredibly satisfying to play through thanks to its fluid animations. The weapons are very satisfying to use and have a strong impact. Since they are futuristic weapons, they're not always restricted to basic assault rifle or pistol or shotguns. They all have unique traits that make them more advantageous than the other. As a pilot, you get the advantage of being a lot faster than your regular rifleman, which allows you to traverse through the levels using your wall running and double jumping ability. All of these abilities are utilized very well, not just for platforming and advancing through the levels, but also to find hidden collectibles and secrets that are scattered throughout the level. As a Titan, you're definitely not as agile as your pilot self, but you are infinitely more powerful, and you have tons and tons of incredibly destructive loadouts that allow you to annihilate everyone on your step. But the power fantasy doesn't last very long, as you're gonna fight enemies who have their own Titans as well, and this can lead into some really intense fights. I do have a couple of problems with the game. They're pretty minor, and the major one can be solved rather easily. I've beaten the game on the hard difficulty on the first time, and I have beaten the game on master. The game is pretty tough on master, and I got annihilated on every step. The hard difficulty provides a decent challenge, but the regular difficulty is so piss easy that the only possible threat is my own stupidity. It's also one of the reasons why the game is so short. In master difficulty, I always find myself retrying the section because I got my ass kicked. In regular difficulty, I always breeze through the game and its bosses with no issues. So if you're pretty skilled in first-person shooters, you might want to bump the game to either hard or master. Otherwise, the game will be less than 4 hours long. As I mentioned before, your Titan can carry whatever loadouts that they like, or more accurately, whatever loadouts that they happen to get at that particular level. But you as a pilot can only carry 2 weapons. A lot of the Titan fights are already easy to begin with on the regular difficulty, but it's a hell of a lot easier when you can just switch classes on the fly. That's what the loadouts are. They are classes with different power-ups, special abilities, and perks in general. The implementation of this in the single player is rather half-baked, not to mention the sudden silence between switching loadouts. Seriously, you can have an epic fight between robots with orchestral music, guns blazing, lasers going pew pew pew, but it all instantly stops when you press the change loadout button. It's like the transition to every section in this video. Thanks to the game running in the Source engine, this game runs shockingly well, even on lower end systems. The game recommends a GTX 1060, but I have ran this game on my GTX 1050 laptop in the past and my GTX 1660 Ti laptop right now. The game runs smooth in all of those with zero issues at 1080p 60 FPS on mostly high settings. There are loads of options that you can tweak on the PC, including an FOV slider. I've never encountered a moment in the game where it drops below 60 FPS in all of the PC that I've I ran it with. It's buttery smooth. If you're only just now making a brand new PC, even if you're making an entry-level one, I suggest to give this game a try. This is not only a beautiful game to look at, but it will definitely run smooth on most modern systems, within reason at least. Don't expect this game to run on your Windows 98 PC or whatever, but hey, if you have a decent CPU-GPU combo, this game can probably run with no issues, so give it a try and see what happens. Don't worry, your computer most likely won't catch fire. I don't know what else to say about Titanfall 2 that everyone else hasn't said already. Titanfall 2 is great. It's a solid game with an excellent but relatively short single-player campaign that is a good story with good characters that glue the plot together. And if you're not into the plot, the gameplay is one of the best that first-person shooters have to offer. It's intense and fast-paced. It's very smoothly animated and pleasant to play with. It's just a pleasant experience overall, a more than pleasant experience actually. I highly recommend Titanfall 2. Even if it's not on sale, the game is typically sold for $30, which is still a very solid deal in and of itself, but it can also get discounted to $10, or at least in the Steam version. Not sure about the console version, they don't discount as frequently as Steam does, but if you can get this game for $30, that's a freaking steal right there. 60 may have overdone it a little, but $30 is quite the safe bet. Whatever the case may be, play Titanfall 2. Let me repeat that, play Titanfall 2.